On today's podcast, I am talking with licensed Reiki master teacher Terry Dulin. Terry practices Reiki in Michigan, in the U.S. Sorry, is it Michigan, Terry? It's
Crown Point, Indiana, Illinois, Florida, Michigan, Ohio.
You're all over. I said that, I realized that. And Terry and I have talked before with you, but we want to talk again this time about chapter 4 in the Reiki Business Book. And we're talking today about doing Reiki sessions and starting to have clients and setting up a Reiki business if Reiki sessions are part of your Reiki business. And whether they are or not, I would encourage you to listen. I know Terry's going to have some great advice for us. That's one of the things about being a licensed Reiki master teacher. We have over 1,000 hours of additional training and a lot of experience. And it's our great joy to share that with you and see if we can save you a few steps in this learning and growing process. So welcome, Terry. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Just before we begin, I want to let you know about a few things we have coming up at the farm. In March, we have a full slate of licensed ICRT level 1 and 2 and master classes, as well as Animal Reiki level 1 and 2 and master. And they are in an Australian friendly time zone, which means that there's a day added to each class, shorter days, but one extra day. And they are taught in the evenings in North America, and it would be the following morning in Australia. Now, when you go and look at that, the time is the Australian time. So if you are in North America, you would basically be starting the evening before the date that is there. But if evenings work for you in North America or early mornings in Australia, I hope you'll join us. It's always a delight to get people together from these time zones. We often also have some people from Asia joining us. And so if that time zone works for you, please join us. Those classes are all online. And in May, I'll be having my first hybrid classes, which means that you're welcome to join us online. They will be done in the Atlantic time zone, but I will have limited spaces, a limited number of spaces for people who would like to join in person. And what I would ask is, just as you register, just let me know if you plan to attend in person or online. There's no limit to the number of people that can attend online, but I will have only a limited number of in-person spaces. But there are some of you that would like to visit us here at the farm, and this will be the first classes that I'm doing hybrid. I'm really excited about it. And the first classes that I'll be seeing some people in person. So if those classes speak to you, then please join us. Terry, what do you have coming up in the next little bit?
I have Reiki 1 and 2 classes in Akron, Ohio. Pardon me. Sorry. Lansing, Michigan, Chicago for my Reiki 1 and 2 classes. I have master classes coming up in Springfield, Illinois, and also Columbus, Ohio, and Lansing, Michigan. So
that's wonderful. You just made me think about Columbus, Ohio, Terry. I will be there at the Equine Affair in Columbus, Ohio in April. So when you said that, I'll be speaking. Yeah, I'll be speaking.
That would be wonderful if our weekends coincide.
I know. I'm wondering about that. We'll have to compare days.
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to see you.
Same. I haven't seen you in person in a few years. It would be really nice. And so that event, just for anybody listening, if you're interested in horses, it's the Equine Affair, a horse event in Columbus, Ohio. You can look it up, and I'll be speaking about animal communication, animal Reiki. I'm actually also going to be speaking about essential oils in horses and leading people through fear of horses with tapping. So that'll be kind of fun. Before we go too much further, I just wonder if I can begin with a brief invocation and just invite everybody to bring your hands together in Gasho. And I'll ask you if you have anything to add when it feels complete on my end, Terry.
Oh, I'm perfect. Thank you.
Okay. And just inviting your Reiki energy to begin flowing. And if you have Reiki symbols, invite those to join you here today. And if you're already doing Reiki sessions, but would maybe like to expand or grow and maybe into a professional practice, or even if you already have a professional practice, but you would like to have that expand, or maybe you've never done sessions before and this is all new to you, wherever you are in that journey, welcome. We're so glad that you're here and so happy that you've joined us today. When I got the nudge in Heathrow Airport to teach the teachers and the practitioners so that you can spread Reiki in the world, I realized what a profound effect that may have as each one of you steps a little more out of your comfort zone and begins to share more and more Reiki. The vibration on the planet rises. So thank you. Thank you for being here and listening and for saying yes. And thank you for having the courage to step out of your comfort zone and to do something new. It is so appreciated. Thank you for spreading love and Reiki on the planet. And thank you for the beautiful light that you are in the world. As light bringers, we don't fight the darkness, we illuminate it. It's a very peaceful process. And it's something that we can accomplish through Reiki, helping the darkness to heal. Understanding that as these layers release into the light, they will be listened to and heard and nurtured and healed and have an opportunity to become a force for good in the world and on the earth today. Thank you for being a force for good in the world. Aho and namaste. Thank you.
Thank you.
As we alluded to in this, and I just want to also let listeners know that I will be hosting a Reiki share. Let's see, a little bit later this month. I don't know if I believe it may be next Wednesday evening. And that Reiki share is going to be a Q&A. A question and answer for any questions you may have about the 4 chapters that we've covered so far in the podcasts. And those are free or by donation. So you can go head on over to my website, reikifromthefarm.com, and sign up for that to receive the link. And I'd love to have you join us if you have any questions based on what we're covering today. So Terry, I'm so excited to cover this chapter with you, chapter 4, and you've had an opportunity to have a sneak peek at the chapter. What stood out to you? What did you think of it? And what kind of stood out to you as you had a look at that chapter?
So I love the chapter. Of course, it's about Reiki sessions, and I love everything Reiki, but I loved how you really walk a practitioner through practical things of what they can do to build their sessions and to build their confidence, right, in doing sessions. Of course, we know there's always a fear that we have to get over with something, anything in our life. It doesn't necessarily have to be Reiki or doing sessions, but we have fear from time to time, and it's always important to take that first step. Yes. So I loved how, again, just that you were able to share with your readers and listeners of experiencing the fear, going through the fear, starting with family and friends, and then being open to, and I love this, right? That sometimes they're going to be more critical to us than our actual clients are, which is true. However, there are some clients who are very open with their thought process also. So, which is great. I love. But again, I just loved how, again, wonderfully the chapter read, and how, again, you just walk everyone through getting over the fear, practicing things that you won't necessarily think of as a practitioner. And I also loved how you said you start sending Reiki to your clients to clear them before the client actually gets to you. I used to do that also. I would send Reiki. For me, it was more just to allow them to be in a more relaxed state prior to coming to a session. Another thought process, as far as like fear goes, for me at least, is giving myself Reiki. Yeah. So if I'm ever in any situation where I'm fearful, I give myself Reiki. So that would be something that I would also just maybe share. Give yourself Reiki
to heal the fear.
4 sessions. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll say it that way.
Thank you, Terry. And was there anything that stood out to you in the chapter that you were surprised about, or that you hadn't anticipated seeing, or was it all pretty?
Nothing that I can think of like right now. Again, it was for me it's like Reiki sessions made simple, right? Or made easy kind of thing. Right. So there were topics in there. I can't point them out right now, but there were certain items and, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. Wow, she put that in there. I'm like, yay. Because again, I've been practicing for 12 years. I don't think of those things because again, it's like second nature to me to sit there and go through a session. But no, you were honest to God, like you were going step by step. It's like, okay, you can have this situation, or this situation. So yeah, it was perfect. And then be open to it. That's again, be open to everything and know that it's coming from Reiki.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you, Terry. Those are all some great comments. One of the things I wanted to try to cover in that was the possibility of doing sessions both in person and also at a distance. So I try to walk people through that, how you can, because some people might be familiar with in-person sessions, but not distance, or vice versa. And just how that could work. And another thing that came up was the space. Like many people think I have to have a space in order to do a session, but what would you say to them about that, about space? Because I know one of the things that showed up for me is that not necessarily, like if you do distance sessions, you don't need to have an office space or a space. You can set up a space in your home, but you might not be comfortable with that. So you might prefer to set up a professional space. And if you're just getting started and don't really want to take the risk, a really good idea. Bryce Goebel mentioned the possibility of partnering with a massage therapist or a chiropractor, and because they don't work 24/7. And so maybe using their space when they're not using it, which is already set up for you with a massage table and whatnot. And one of the benefits of something like that is the strategic partnership that you can form, because then they begin offer them a session so that they can see what it's like before you even begin. And maybe they'll begin referring clients to you and that sort of thing. So you might be able to set up a lovely partnership. Another option is to travel to your clients if that feels comfortable to you. And I've actually, although I didn't travel to a lot of clients, I had a few clients who were either allergic to all the animals at my farm, but still wanted a session, or who weren't well enough to come to me. And in those instances, I would travel to them. And I realized from that's a very viable alternative. Is there anything about any of that, Terry, that you would like to add?
So I honestly, I would say I have practiced and have done everything that you've shared. Okay, this is me, okay? And I am still, but was really in the beginning, really enamored, like with William Rand, right? With his practice. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be going to the International Center for Reiki Training, and I'm going to have my Corona Reiki class. And this was back in 2010. And I was expecting a center. I was expecting this grand center. And when I actually drove up to it was his house.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, this man is so laid back. Like, he's, again, not ego, but he does Reiki out of his house. He was teaching classes out of his house. And I'm like, and then even with Hana, Hawaii, that's his house.
Yeah.
So it's an international. And I'm like, and I thought to myself, I'm like, oh my God, if this man, William Rand, can do sessions or teach classes out of his house, I can do the same thing. So that actually offered some form of relief to me, that I didn't have to build this great big center, right, for myself, that I could really go ahead and look at the space that I have.
Yes.
And then work with what I had. And then again, allow Reiki to help me grow to where I want to become. And I'm still working the process. I'm still getting where I want to be. So it really is, it's a process. And as you work with Reiki, we all grow, we all change. That's part of life. So again, it was just a huge relief seeing that somebody, and then I, of course, find out most Reiki practitioners do Reiki out of their house. And again, way back when I first started out, I didn't realize that. I didn't know that was not in my mind an option for me.
Right.
So yeah, seeing other people having practices out of their house, they can. And it's what you want to make it ultimately. So start small if you want, and then just build up to where you want to be.
I love that. I think that's excellent advice, Terry. And I love that you bring in William. And yes, how lovely is it that we get to attend Reiki classes at his home? It feels so nice. And I remember the very first class I took with him wasn't at his home. I studied with him initially. I only have worked with him once at his home in Hawaii, or twice at his home in Hawaii, but otherwise I took classes in other locations. So they weren't at his home, but he shared with us a bean soup recipe that he makes so that people,
that is wonderful,
for their lunches. And I thought,
yes,
how wonderful. And I used to do a lentil type soup until actually I haven't done it recently, just because of all the food allergies that people have. You're making me think that I need to revive the soup and just say, by the way, I will have this, some bread,
right,
if you have other allergies.
I'd like to share then. It's a super easy soup. You can add whatever you want, but It's a 15 bean soup with olive oil and then either soy sauce or tamari sauce. So for those who have gluten allergies, my suggestion is to use the tamari sauce. That's it.
You know what? We need to include that recipe in the notes section of the podcast for people.
Sure.
So, guys, if you want to have William's wonderful bean soup recipe, and it is good, I've made it, then we'll include that recipe for you. And you're right, it can be gluten-free with the tamari sauce. And so you do have to put it on the night before. But I thought, how special is it that this man does that for his students? And I thought, I want to study with him in person so that I can have his soup. And
it's worth it.
It actually during
classes after, the soup's the main focus. It's delicious.
I love
the class is just the perk.
Another thing that I talked about in the Reiki session section is the calendar. And one of the things and it was a lesson that I had with Reiki, because I wasn't very good at setting boundaries, Terry. I was people would contact me and want a session. And initially, and I also wasn't very organized at first, which is surprising because I'm organized in other areas of my life, but I really kept my business practices out of Reiki for a long time, which is one of the reasons I wrote the book, was to help others so that you didn't do the same. But I can remember people would contact me and ask for a session, and I would go back with what's good for you. And it wound up being this really long back and forth, getting the session time, etc. And it also often meant that I would have to miss my daughter's volleyball game or something, because that was the time that we would land on after. And finally, the energy just tapped me on the shoulder and let me know, look, this isn't very professional. And also, it's encroaching on your family time. So why don't you decide when you want to do Reiki sessions and mark the sessions in your calendar? And so I actually have a paper calendar. I have my session times marked out. I only see clients at a distance now, just because it's the only way I can fit everyone in. And it's a phone call. I phone them if they're in North America, and it's a Zoom call if they're outside of North America. And basically I do record their session as well, so that I can send them a recording. And each time they listen, they get another, basically it's a guided meditation. And sometimes it's a meditation from our Reiki manual. Sometimes I more or less listen to the energy. So sometimes it's a little different. But so I really only see clients Thursday afternoons and Friday mornings. And at first, when I started doing that, I thought, oh, gee, that's not going to be convenient for people. That's not going to work very well. And people would call and say, I'd like a Reiki session, or they would email me, and I'd say, and what the energy had me do was say, okay, I have these times available. So I would give them 2 or 3 times. And when I first started doing Reiki sessions professionally, Terry, beyond friends and family, I actually only wanted to do 2 to 4 sessions a week. And that worked for my schedule. I had 2 other businesses, three other businesses that worked for that worked financially, that worked for what I wanted to do. And I basically just looked around and charged the same as what other Reiki practitioners in my area were charging. But at first, when I went back to people and said, look, I have this time Thursday afternoon or this time Friday morning, they said, well, no, I want Wednesday evening. And I said, well, I don't have any times available Wednesday evening. And even the people that said, okay, never mind, they would come back and say, guess what? I have Friday morning off now. I can totally do Friday morning. And by then I would probably have booked the session. So I'm like, I'm sorry, it has to be next Friday. No problem. I can make it work. But what I came to from that was that if the timing that I have doesn't work for you, maybe I'm not the right Reiki practitioner. Like maybe that's a sign that you are to just go and look for another practitioner. And what do you do in that? And have you ever had any difficulties setting boundaries?
Yes, especially in the beginning. Wanted to make myself available. And that was, or is something that you will eventually learn. Because I know, I'll speak for myself. For me, when I first started out, again, I wanted to be very accommodating, right? Similar to you. Oh my God, I've got this time frame or this time frame, which is workable for some people. But yeah, as you're progressing with your business, it's not always workable because there are other obligations that I work full time. I've got a full time, like a 9-to-5 job. So for me, and then I teach on weekends. So I work, I see clients, similar to you, right? We work with clients, we teach. So my weekends are generally booked with Reiki classes. So I do have to monitor and modify my schedule and just have specific times. I've got 2 dogs. My one dog's a therapy dog. My other dog, we're working on making him a therapy dog, and he's going to need training and testing. So there's priorities. There are priorities, and there's also sacrifices, right? So that's the other thing, that when we're a Reiki practitioner and we're doing sessions, it's ultimately what you want to do and how, I don't want to say fast or slow, but how comfortable you are with growing your business. But yeah, having boundaries with clients is extremely important, I will say. And then also, no, I'm not 100% the right practitioner for every client. And that's just the truth of the matter. Again, I can try to accommodate, but if it does not work, I have no problem referring a client out to another Reiki master. And I generally I refer my clients out to my students to help them build their practice. And then, of course, depending upon the situation, I also refer out to my licensed teachers, my fellow teachers.
Yeah. I don't know if you found it, but when I did set the boundary, people seem to respect what I do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
How was it for you starting out? Like, I know for me starting out, one of the things that I will just finish up on the calendar. One of the things the Reiki energy showed me to do, and I do talk about this in the book, I actually have a paper calendar, and I literally beam Reiki into it with the following. I say, please help the people who need to see me this week get here easily. And so I actually don't have a cancellation policy at the moment because I'm not going anywhere. I'm here. And what I have noticed is my clients are very respectful. If they do have to cancel or shift their appointment, they tend to do it a few days in advance. And I almost always have somebody desperately needing an emergency appointment that I can slide in. And I really believe it's that prayer that I say. And I've gradually moved up so that I see 10 to 12 clients a week now. For a while, it was 7 to 10, and now it's about 10 to 12 clients a week. And eventually, I even moved my calendar online, and that has been a godsend. I just used Square appointments, and I have the link on my website and also in this podcast, and people can go in and book. And a big part of the reason I moved my calendar online, because I have my regular clients and I didn't really think I had space for other clients, but I was guided to put my calendar online. I was guided to put my session price up, which I'm always a little reluctant to do, but it was a clear message, so I did. And what that did was, some of my regular clients said, you know what, I still want to see you, but I've been a bit greedy. I don't need to see you every week. I can see you every 2 weeks or every 3 or every 4. And that opened a few sessions so that new clients could come in, and the calendar makes that possible. But one of the things, and I love the calendar, I don't have to manage it anymore. It sends the reminders. I just go in. I'll be going in later today, and I've already gone in and started sending Reiki to the people that I'll be seeing later today and tomorrow. But I go in Wednesday or Thursday, have a look at what it's usually full, and just say, oh, isn't that going to be fun? And okay, I might want to, you know what, I'm going to message this person, and maybe I'm going to have to start a little bit early because she's only booked. There was probably only a half an hour available, but she needs a bit more time, and this sort of thing. I love having my calendar online. I only recently did it, but it's just been a wonderful thing. And is your calendar online, Terry?
I'm still doing
old school.
I'm still on the paper calendar.
I still use my paper calendar, but I noticed that I like booking my own sessions online for massage therapy and some of my self-care. So I thought I'll make that available to my clients, and they seem to love it. And some of them book 6 months out, and that way they know they have their sessions lined up. So I did just want to mention that as well. And but I did paper right up until December of this year, and it worked just fine.
Yeah.
And I still do send Reiki, just asking that the people who need the sessions get them, and it always seems to work out. Tell me a little bit, though, about when you first started. doing sessions. One of the things when I first started doing sessions, I actually taught before I started doing Reiki sessions, because in my mind, I knew I needed to teach right away, even though I had no intention to teach when I went to England. But I thought, how can I keep this incredible energy away from people? And also, we studied with William Rand. Our lineage is very closely linked with Yusui Sensei. And I wanted to make that available to people, and the healing and the wonder that is Reiki. So I did start to teach right away, but I didn't really do sessions right away. I didn't really have a space for it. And in my mind, aside from family and friends, Reiki sessions, I thought, for the price of 3 Reiki sessions, somebody could take a level 1 class and then they would have. And I was really reluctant to take money for doing Reiki. That was something that I really struggled with and really had to work through. What were some of the challenges you noticed? And when you started to teach, tell me a little bit about, or started to do sessions, what did that look like?
So my background is a little different, right? As far as my mom is a professional psychic. So truth be told, and however that sounds, I actually learned Reiki back in 2002. And I learned Reiki initially to help my mom with her healings. So I've always been exposed to doing sessions.
Right.
So for me, it wasn't difficult in the sense, it wasn't difficult in one sense, but I also had a different perspective where I was not necessarily, it wasn't my client. It wasn't somebody that was actually coming to me for a session per se, as they were coming to my mother for a healing session, and then I was her assistant.
Did that,
if that makes sense?
It makes me think that must have taken some of the pressure off of you a little bit.
A huge ton, because then pretty much it was the fact that my mom would call me and say, "Hey Terry, can you come over? I have that wants a Reiki session. Can you help me?" And I'm like, "Oh, absolutely." And of course, whatever I was doing, I'd always like reschedule or whatever and go help my mom. So with that, I want to share maybe another thought process is for new practitioners, maybe join a Reiki share. Because if you want experience, right, giving Reiki, you've got your family, you've got your friends, but then also getting more practice, attending a Reiki share will also help to alleviate some of the anticipation or the fear around giving sessions. So that's practice time. Right. You know, something else that I would 100% suggest to my students, and I suggest that to all of my students, join a Reiki share in your area. And that will help, that really will help, because the more Reiki that you're doing, the more Reiki offers or allows more opportunity for you to do Reiki.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great idea, Terry. I love that. I'm going to include that tip in the book.
Okay. Thanks.
So when you started your own practice, was there any hesitation there? And I did you have any trouble accepting money or anything like that? Like I did. I really did. I had to work. I had to do a lot of Reiki and work through that.
I did. And I think that might even be part of the process, right? Everyone's in a different space. They really are. Some people, when they start as a practitioner, they have no hesitation in accepting money, funds, or bartering, right? Because they believe that what they're offering is valuable, and it is. For me, I wanted to start slow. And I have to tell you, I still, not so much that I want to start slow, I feel that my prices are very accommodating for most people.
Right.
And I'm in Northwest Indiana, so that's another consideration. Opposed to being in Chicago, where I know people are charging $100 or $150, heck, probably more, $150 for an hour session.
Right.
To where I think like my hour session's $70 or $75 or something. For me, number one, I work. So there is another source of income coming into my household. And I really do want to make sure that I'm affordable for people who need me. Yeah. So that's something that I think meditate or sit with, just to see where it fits for them. You're not, again, I'm not saying anything. It's completely and totally up to you. You don't have to charge $150 an hour unless you want to charge $150 an hour. So, again, everyone's in a different space.
Yeah.
So
that's right. And one of the things that I found about pricing, I know I was guided, I charge 75 for a half an hour and 120 for an hour, and that it's Canadian. So that's $50 US. No, just kidding. But there is that. But everybody's, that seems to be the price range that I've been in. But I really do understand, like, a lot depends on your location. If you're in New York City and you have the higher expenses of New York City or Chicago, like you mentioned, or and if you have a rented office and this sort of thing, like
if you have overhead, that's huge. That is that's being a responsible, honest, my opinion, that's being responsible for your business and for your practice.
Yeah, definitely. And so I agree. And so really one of the things that I suggest is just to do some research to, as far as your pricing goes. And there was a question on last month's Q&A that I want to bring up regards to pricing, Terry. I explained to her that I actually prefer that I didn't feel that diminished the value of her offering. The fact that it's perfectly fine to offer other modalities along with Reiki and just be upfront about it. But me personally, I don't actually like to receive, if I want a psychic reading, I book a psychic reading. If I want a Reiki session, I book a Reiki session. I don't really need somebody else to, I do have the abilities to hear the energy, and I don't always enjoy having other people's interpretations interrupt my session. I just want a Reiki session. So that's of more value to me. And so I think as long as we're upfront in what we're offering, I don't think that diminishes the value. And do you have an opinion on that too?
No, I agree 100%. And this is something that comes up in my classes that we do talk about, because there are many people who have ability, to see or to hear. And I have to tell you, I'm not. So when somebody's coming to me, they really are getting a Reiki session. I'm growing. I always feel like I'm growing in my spirituality. So I always say this. I always tell my students, I'm not psychic. Tiny little bit I'm psychic. But no, as far as a psychic read, like if you wanted a psychic read, again, respectfully, I say to my clients, please talk to my mom. She's a professional psychic. I will tell them, so, hey, Terry sent me, so they get the family and friends discount for their reading. But no, and here's the thing. That, in my mind, to me, a bonus in a sense, right? That's not a true Reiki session. True Reiki session is that you are the practitioner, you're allowing the energy to flow through you as a practitioner and going to your client. And again, Reiki comes from a higher level of consciousness, so it knows what the client truly needs. So again, I think that's always like a perk or a bonus. If I were to see anything, I sometimes share, but generally, I don't have that ability or gift. So if I do, it's generally stuff I keep to myself. So, but yeah, I do. Sorry, that's all. I don't want anybody to ever feel, because again, in one sense, it's, how do I say this? In one sense, Reiki is such a beautiful gift alone, just that in and of itself, that always necessary.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's one of the things that I've done, because I can sometimes receive information, is I just made a decision that I didn't want to unless I needed to share it with the client. So I actually asked Reiki to just work with my discernment and only show me the things that I needed to know or needed to share with my client. And it was interesting because a lot of the extra information just went away, and it gave me more clarity and focus on my sessions. And I really appreciated that. I could be a lot more clear on what energy we were removing when I wasn't receiving the additional information. So that's actually been a bit of a bonus for me. Terry, what other tips do you have for people getting started or wanting to grow their Reiki session business? What are some of the things that you would tell them?
Pardon me.
Sure.
I would ask them to really follow their intuition and Reiki guidance as far as where they're at. I always say it doesn't have to look perfect, but it doesn't. It's your practice. So I know that there are people who can hit the ground running, which is fantastic, and then follow the Reiki guidance that way. Some people need to start slow and build their practice. I will tell you, I feel that wherever you're at is, again, the perfect place for you to be. So for me, I needed to start small. I needed to gradually grow into my practice.
Yes,
but I know everyone's not there. So do what you're comfortable doing. Have fun. And again, to me, it's important. Reiki can be very formal, right? And we need to treat Reiki with respect. But Reiki is also very light. It's very loving. It's very inviting. So have fun with the process, right? And give yourself Reiki. Self-care is so important. Whether you're giving it Reiki to yourself or receiving a session, I would encourage you strongly to encourage you to have other sessions.
Yes.
And I believe that will help also. So whether you're meditating on Reiki, giving yourself a session, everything will fall in place at the right time. But then I would also say, allow it to guide you. It would be my biggest, because I know what I want. I know where I want to end. And I want to be able to enjoy the journey and the process of going from point A to point B. But that's different for everybody.
Yeah. Cami Cote put that in a quote. It was that, enjoy the process. You're only a new practitioner for a little while. So enjoy it and think about what are some of the things that you need to do to get ready. Like maybe you've never practiced on anyone. Maybe you just need to sit down and write a list of family and friends and reach out to them with a message or an email and just say, hey, I need some practice. Would you like to help me? And another thing that I like to tell people when they're ready to get started is to just go ahead and do the research and see what typical prices are in your region and price yourself somewhere in the mid-range. But you can be, at first, you're going to practice probably without charging people, probably just family and friends. When you are ready to get a little more serious and create a practice, you can be really clear with people, and you can even discount your initial sessions. That's one thing William talked about. You can say, hey guys, I'm starting with a practice, offering a discount. This is the amount for the first 10 clients that sign up with me, or something like that. And the purpose of that discount is not because you're not worth it or the session's not worth it. It's if it helps take pressure off of you, then go ahead and set up a discount at the beginning. But one of the things that it helps to be really clear with is that this discount is just for this month, or just for the first. It works even better if you say this discount is for the first 10 people who sign up, but even if you do that, make sure you put the final price in there. I'm offering, for the first 10 people who sign up, I'm offering a $75 session for $25. Do you want to be one of the first, or the first 10 people who book 3 sessions? You'll pay for 2 and get 1 free. However you decide to do it, but you can really activate Reiki in the process. One of the things that was really interesting to me is that recently in 2020, when our courses went online and William and Colleen and the ICRT created a webinar to both train us and also entrain our energy, attune us to the higher vibration energy needed to teach online. William sat with Reiki to set the price. He sat with Reiki and Reiki gave him the price and the numbers. And it's okay to involve Reiki in every part of this. You don't have a massage table, you need a massage table, activate Reiki, ask it to help you. I picked up a massage table for $100 from somebody which is, I needed a second one. It's the perfect table for a bigger table for being outdoors and with the horses. And if you need help figuring out the pricing, activate Reiki and allow it to be a part of this journey with you. If you have trouble figuring out who you might reach out to as a potential list of clients, activate Reiki, do a Gasho meditation, just asking to be seen, the clients, or even bring the Reiki energy in and then do some automatic writing afterward of the people that you thought of. Basically, every step of the way, you can activate Reiki. And one of the first sharing Reiki with others sessions, it's really, for most people who don't do it backwards like I did, sessions are the first way of stepping out of the spiritual closet and letting people know that you do this. One of the other things I notice about sessions, Terry, though, is that they inform me and they inform my practice. One of the things that I've noticed is that if I am doing sessions and I see an underlying theme with my clients, I turn around and say, okay, I'm seeing a theme. How does this apply to me? And almost always my clients are helping me either learn something or they're helping me see something within myself that needs to be healed that perhaps I hadn't recognized. And so I love doing sessions. I'm learning something new all the time. Just last week, a whole new energy came in during sessions, which showed, I work with a lot of empaths because I'm an empath, and it showed the gift of empathy and how it's basically being reversed so that we start spreading the light in the world rather than pulling in the denseness and the dark or the negativity. So I'm always learning something from my clients. Do you have any examples or anything like that you'd like to share with people?
Honestly, nothing that I can think of, because I have to tell you, when I read that in the chapter, it never even dawned on me to view certain, because I will tell you that I see patterns in my classes, but not quite in my sessions. So when I was reading that in the chapter, I'm like, wow, that's pretty interesting. So now that's something that I want to, I guess, pay closer attention to. But I have noticed from time to time, a client of mine, a session or a couple sessions would have a similar theme for that particular client, but not necessarily a theme for several clients, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, it does. Yeah. I'll notice it like maybe out of 10 sessions, I'll have 3 or 4 that are very similar or working on something similar. And I find it fascinating. And whenever that happens, and sometimes even more than 3 or 4, whenever that happens, I really sit with the energy and look at it. But I'm often learning something. It's so much easier to see something when and you mentioned about self-care. If you are going to be doing sessions for others, really make sure you do your own self-care. It's really important. I think it helps us come from a better place, a place of more clarity and more joy, and just from a better place for our client. But one of the things that a lot of my clients do is they get a monthly session from me, and then they go and see their clients. And I get a monthly session from Colleen. And I find I really rely on that to just keep things going forward and keep me from getting stuck. And since I started doing that, I never seem to move into energetic crisis. I just keep it just keeps everything flowing. So I think that's really important. But it is so interesting to notice those patterns. And sometimes as you're looking at it with a little bit of distance, you can see what's going on, whereas you're a little too close to see what's going on in yourself. And that's why I get a session from somebody else. But even when I'm doing sessions for others, I'll see those patterns and those things and say, okay, I think there's a message here for me in that too. So is there anything else, Terry, before we move into an exercise or a meditation today that you'd like to share with people?
Have fun, love yourself. It's all perfect. It really is. Everything is divine timing. So
yeah. I guess you made me think of one thing. Occasionally, I love to use in our ICRT manuals, we have client documentation form. And I love to use that with my sessions because quite often when somebody doesn't have something right in front of them, they don't necessarily remember it. Or I can remember one client who was having debilitating migraines, and we did a session, and then I never heard from her for 3 or 4 months. And when she showed up again, one of the questions is, have you noticed any changes since your last session? And she thought about it and she said, no, not really. I said, oh, okay. So I looked back at my notes and I said, so you're still having debilitating migraines? And she went, oh my gosh, I forgot about those. I haven't had a migraine in 3 months, 3 or 4 months. And then she thought about, I haven't had a migraine since I came to see you. And I said, okay, then. And so she was able to realize the validity of what we had done, but just when she wasn't experiencing the migraines, she wasn't thinking about them. So it can be really interesting. And another thing that I've noticed, and I wonder if you've ever noticed this, Terry, is that one time, for instance, there was a man who wanted to work on his knee, and we worked on his knee, but the energy kept taking me back to his heart, back to his heart, back to his heart. And I told him afterward, I said, look, I did work on your knee, but for some reason I had to keep going back to your heart. Does that make any sense to you? And he said, no, it doesn't make any sense to me at all. And we checked in with how his knee was feeling, and it was really not even maybe marginally better at the end of it. And so I felt, oh, well, I guess that session didn't go very well, or it didn't work very well. And I didn't see him again for a couple of months, and he came running up to me on the street and said, Pam, I just want to tell you something. That Reiki session did help. He said he had broken up. He had a relationship that had broken up with someone several months before, and he didn't think that it was still impacting him. But he said, it must have been because right after that session, my heart cleared and the heaviness cleared, and I met somebody and I'm in love now. And how's your knee? And he said, it's about the same, but I don't care.
I love that story. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I guess it's just following the wisdom of the energy. The energy knew that he was there for his knee, but that what he really needed was he needed that to clear his heart and make that opening for the new relationship that was coming in. So it's really doing those sessions. It's really just about following the guidance of Reiki. And another thing is that we can sometimes get a little too caught up in ourselves, or I don't know, my ego. And one of the things doing sessions for others has taught me is it's not about me.
Yes.
It's about
Yeah,
that.
I'd like to share that or interject. So not only for myself, right? I like to hear feedback from my clients to see where they're at. But again, one of the things that I would share with my students, especially as a new practitioner, is follow the Reiki guidance.
Yeah.
We know as practitioners, Reiki comes from a higher level of consciousness. It spans all time and space. So it works on the past, it works on the present, it works in the future. So when you're talking about that gentleman who you were working on his knee, but yet you were guided to work in his heart, I have that in classes or even sessions all the time, to where we don't know where Reiki is going to flow. It has its own consciousness. It flows where it's needed. So when I talk to my students and new practitioners, I'm telling them, follow your intuition, right? Follow the guidance. My intention is always that the Reiki energy will flow to the root cause of whatever is ailing that person. So if it's meant to go to a childhood trauma, it goes to the childhood trauma. If it is maybe a karmic issue that something is stemming from a past life, my intention or my ask is that the Reiki goes to the past life to heal that, so that once that issue is healed, it will then heal everything going forward. So
Right.
I loved when you were sharing that in the book about working on his heart, and then how happy he was because he found, a new love, and he's not worried about his knee. That's so perfect. So, oh my God, see, so that happens for me too.
Well, and the Reiki session and Reiki classes and sessions, both for that matter, I had to learn that I was just the channel. Like, it really had very little to do with me. I was just providing the opportunity for the energy to flow through. And so it really was important for me to work through my fear and my hangups so that I didn't pass those along to my client, and I could just get out of the way and be. Sometimes I've seen sessions like completely change things. I've seen a client come in ready to get a divorce and have just a huge understanding of how much she loves her husband, and go out just ready to make that relationship work, and like just huge shifts. And it's never been about me. And every so often somebody will say, "Oh, you're amazing." And I just laugh, because it's like, yeah, I'm really good at getting out of the way. I'm good
A
at.
clear channel. That's exactly it.
I move my personality and ego aside. That's really all I'm doing. I'm really not
Yes.
doing anything beyond that.
I love it. I love it.
A hollow tube. Yeah. Terry, thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us today. I think I'm going to bring us into a little bit of a meditation, just to help remove some of the obstacles that you might have to doing sessions for others. So I hope you all enjoy that. I'm just going to invite everyone to close your eyes and to take a deep breath, bringing your hands into Gasho and activating your Reiki energy. And as you do, take a few moments to think about what might be blocking you or getting in the way of doing Reiki sessions and becoming a Reiki practitioner, or of expanding your practice. And just ask that if the energy causing these blocks exists in your body, where would it be? What shape would it have? What color would it be? Bringing in your Reiki symbols and just noticing the Reiki energy flowing around you and flowing into your body on your breath. Simply invite it to release any blocks or barriers that you might have to taking that next step in your path with Reiki, whatever it might be. Place your hands comfortably on your body and understand that it's normal to have blocks and barriers. Don't judge yourself. And simply recognize them and be willing to let them go. This is the process of learning and growing or strengthening the soul. And for each block or barrier that we let go, we move more steadily toward enlightenment. Our blocks might be difficulty in talking about Reiki, or we may still be working through our own faith and belief in Reiki or God or ourselves or our abilities. And just understand that this is all part of the process, and we welcome this process, this incubation, this moving forward. And sometimes moving forward can be uncomfortable, but we're blessed to have Reiki to assist us with that. There may be blocks or barriers within us that we're not aware of, or belief systems that no longer serve us. Anytime you've ever told yourself you're not enough, that inner voice that can be critical, we invite that voice to come to the surface now to be healed in the light of compassion, so that it might become kinder and might better support us as we move forward in our work. We welcome the beauty and we welcome the growth. We are ready to step forward, whatever that looks like for us. Ready to step into the comfort of being our authentic self with Reiki, becoming a force for good in the world. We invite Reiki to help us move through that into a place of ease within ourselves. And we ask for the discernment to know how to use our voice, when to use it, and what language to use in different situations. We ask to become receptive to the Reiki energy. Sometimes our receptivity can be blocked or can be ineffective. So we open ourselves up to receive now as the light of our authentic self steps forward and is revealed. And we invite any obstacles to our true potential to release. We remember that ripple effect that comes with every breath, every step, and every move, and every smile. And we bless people just with our being and with Reiki. Ahoma Takwioasan. Namaste, Amen, Ashe, Shalom. And so it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
Terry, I want to thank you for taking time off work this morning to be with us.
Oh my God, my pleasure.
And
Always my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to thank all of you who are with us and listening today. I can't wait to get the Reiki Business Book into your hands. We're just going to keep going through it chapter by chapter to let you know a little bit about what you can expect to see in it. And we so appreciate the bright light that you are in the world, don't we, Terry? Thank you so much, everyone. Namaste.